NASA's mission is to explore the unknown.
What we know about in the universe is a tiny fraction of what's actually out there.
In the search for answers, it launches its scientists into space, its craft beyond the limits of the solar system.
We have no idea what's out there.
Hey, what is that?
There might be dangers lurking in the darkness.
We run across more mysteries than discoveries. We don't know what it's going to throw at us next.
A mysterious event paralyzes orbiting spacecraft and blacks out millions of homes in North America.
Many people are thinking that a nuclear holocaust has begun.
A NASA probe discovers strange magnetic patterns on the moon.
They create a shield, just like the shields in the Starship Enterprise.
And a bizarre photograph triggers fears of an ancient force that could annihilate life on our planet.
It's sort of like a solar system time bomb.
These are NASA's Unexplained Files. Disaster strikes a lone cosmonaut on a landmark Soviet mission.
Volinov's descent capsule fails to separate on re-entry. It's engulfed in a 5,000-degree fireball.
It's about to burn through and kill him.
The recovery team is prepared to find a charred, unrecognizable corpse.
The Russians aren't expecting to recover him alive, but there's no trace of him. Nothing.
How can he have simply vanished?
January 1969. The United States is pulling ahead of the Soviets in the race to put the first man onto another world.
It's a few months before the Apollo 11 mission leaves for the moon. The Soviets are not going to make a moon landing in time, they know that. But they have other tricks up their sleeve.
The Soviets announce a record-breaking mission of their own. The first ever docking of two manned craft in space.
It's a historic event, and it's also important for the future of the space program in the Soviet Union, critically important.
At 11:20 a.m. on January 15th, Soyuz 5, piloted by Commander Boris Volynov, docks with the orbiting Soyuz 4 capsule 135 miles above the Earth. 90 minutes later, Volonov's two crewmates spacewalk across to Soyuz 4, the first such transfer in history. The Soyuz 4 crew prepares to head home, leaving Volynov and Soyuz 5 alone in the vast emptiness of space.
The two cosmonauts return to Earth without any problems in Soyuz 4. A day later, Volynov prepares to return in Soyuz 5. That's when things start to go wrong.
To safely re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, Volynov must uncouple the descent module from the service module he's been living in for the past 3 days. But when he fires the explosive bolts that should separate the modules, nothing happens.
The service module doesn't disattach when it's supposed to, which means that Volinov's ship is entering the Earth backwards.
Volynov plunges towards Earth at over 15,000 miles per hour with no heat shield.
Re-entering nose first is certain death. The front end is not shielded against the heat of the re-entry. It will burn through. He'll burn to death, he'll die of a vacuum, all of which will kill him within the next minute or two.
Soyuz 5 slams into the Earth's atmosphere. Fear grips the ground staff in Moscow.
Mission Control is helpless. They can't turn the Soyuz the right way around. They have to just wait and watch.
As Soyuz 5 dives towards the ground, friction heats the exterior up to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. A superheated shroud of plasma begins to eat through the weak nose of the craft.
The hatch seals are burning, and he hasn't got a spacesuit on, so he can feel the heat.
Smoke fills the stricken capsule.
He's now utterly convinced he's about to die within seconds.
Volanov writes what he thinks are his last words in his logbook. And then he takes that and he stuffs it behind his back to try and protect it.
Hoping that if any part of the capsule reaches the ground intact, that logbook will be protected by his charred corpse.
The ball of plasma surrounding Soyuz 5 blocks radio communications with Mission Control. Ground staff track Volanov's capsule as it travels over Russia. But just before 11 a.m. on January 18th, the craft disappears from radar.
The capsule is 1,500 miles off course and going at almost full speed. It crashes into the Ural Mountains, one of the most bleak and remote parts of Russia.
Volanov's colleagues sit in silence as they contemplate their friend enduring a grisly death.
One of them takes off a cap and begins passing it down the row to collect funds for a funeral.
Mission Control scrambles a team to recover Volanov's body. According to official Soviet records, several hours later, they find his charred capsule on a snowy mountainside in minus 40-degree temperatures. What they discover when they open the hatch shocks them.
When they go to retrieve his body, they find the capsule completely intact, but empty. There's no trace of him. Nothing.
What's happened to Volanov on re-entry? How can he have simply vanished?
When the rescue team explores the remote crash site, it spots traces of blood in the snow nearby.
They begin to wonder if they've been beaten to the craft by wolves or bears.
The team scours the area for human remains, but instead reports finding only a trail of human footprints. The tracks lead them to a peasant shack, and inside they are stunned to discover the doomed cosmonaut alive and only suffering from a few broken front teeth.
Against gargantuan odds, not only did Volanov survive the calamitous re-entry of the craft without spacesuit protection or a functioning heat shield, he survived exposure to extreme G-forces and a near full-speed impact with the ground.
During the post-mission investigation, Volanov reveals the improbable sequence of events that saved him from what seemed like certain death as he fell to Earth.
In these final seconds before the nose of the ship burns through, a miracle happens. The jammed latch of the trailing module breaks free. The capsule rights itself, and Volanov realizes that he may live to see the next minute.
The last-minute flip enabled Volanov to deploy the braking parachute. But his troubles weren't over.
When his parachute is released, it tangles itself up.
He rotates, twisting the parachute shroud lines together, and then untwisting. It causes the parachute to partially collapse. Still breaks him, still slows him down, but not enough.
On a regular descent, Volanoff would turn to his braking rockets to slow his approach to 5 feet per second. But when he tried to fire them, they failed to ignite. Instead, Providence saved his life.
And at the last minute, the next miracle shows up. He lands in deep snow, and that snow provides the margin of survival that he is not crushed and killed on his first microsecond back on Earth.
Volanoff's catastrophic re-entry leaves him traumatized, but without serious injuries. Today, his mission is remembered as a tale of extraordinary bravery and sheer dumb luck.
I think it is fair to say that he is the luckiest cosmonaut or astronaut in the history of space exploration.
Coming up, a photographer captures an impossible image of the skies above Indonesia.
It definitely looks like there are two different suns on the horizon.
How could that be possible?
A photographer captures a startling image of an Indonesian sunset.
Is that two suns in that picture? How could that be possible?
The weird phenomenon arouses fears of an ancient destructive force that could threaten our planet.
Could this be the thing that is causing the extinction events, like the destruction of the dinosaurs?
It's sort of like a solar system time bomb.
December 4th, 2015. As the winter sun sets over the town of Tarakan in northern Indonesia, a photographer captures an astonishing image.
When you see this image, it definitely looks like there are two different suns on the horizon.
Is that two suns in that picture? How could that be possible?
When it appears online, the image goes viral, reminding many observers of something created by a Hollywood special effects studio.
The image of a double sun on the horizon at sunset is so romantic. And of course, it's a staple in science fiction.
This isn't the only time a second sun has been captured on camera. The bizarre phenomenon has also been documented in Russia and Canada.
It can't be real. Everyone knows there's only one sun. And surely we would have noticed if there was another.
One theory for the appearance of the second sun is that it's just light refracting through the clouds.
The first thing that jumps in my mind is that it's some type of an optical illusion or a reflection.
Hey, it's at sunset. Enjoy it. Weird stuff happens.
The idea of a second sun in our sky sounds bizarre, but in galactic terms, it's stranger that our sun is alone. Astronomers estimate that over 50% of the stars in the universe have companion stars.
We're unusual in that we can see only one sun in the sky.
When you look at the night sky, roughly half the stars you see are actually what we call binary stars. And these are two stars that are in orbit about each other.
For hundreds of years, mankind has believed that the sun is the only star in our solar system. But recent research suggests a startling possibility.
We've had two different teams present scientific evidence that there's something big lurking at the edge of our solar system.
There are some serious scientists that believe there really are two suns.
The first clue to the existence of this mysterious second sun comes from studies of massive extinction events throughout our planet's history.
It appeared that there is a periodicity in the extinction record. It looked like every 26 million years, there is a major extinction level event on Earth.
If we're getting extinctions on Earth in a cycle, that suggests an astronomical cause.
Some scientists believe that a second star could be the origin of these catastrophic extinction events. Theoretically, a second star's orbit could take it through the band of comets and asteroids at the edge of our solar system, called the Oort cloud. The second star's massive gravitational force then slings objects from the Oort cloud throughout the solar system.
They'll get sent out in all directions, and if they impact the Earth, then you could have cometary impacts that could cause the extinctions like we've seen.
Could this be the thing that is causing the extinction events, like the destruction of the dinosaurs?
Our own sun nurtures and sustains almost all life on Earth. But this second star deals only in death.
Scientists have even given this other star a name. It's called Nemesis. Sort of the dark, evil twin of the sun.
Why do they call it Nemesis? Because it's a destructive force of unimaginable power.
If Nemesis exists, then why has no one confirmed its existence? It could be because of the wavelength of the light it produces.
If there is a second star in our solar system, the reason why we can't see it is because it emits light differently from our own sun.
Scientists speculate that Nemesis only emits infrared light. This makes this deadly star invisible to us.
Human beings evolved to see the light from our own sun. And this particular small star, if it is there, emits almost all of its light in the infrared, where human eyes can't see. So even if you were looking at it in the sky, your eyes aren't designed to see that light.
The bad news is that if Nemesis only emits infrared light, it isn't just impossible to see with our eyes. It's also incredibly hard to detect with telescopes.
People have been looking with special telescopes from space that are infrared sensitive.
We've looked and haven't seen any signal, which deepens the mystery of where this possible second star could be.
If the Nemesis theory is correct, there is an invisible Death Star lurking at the very edges of our solar system. And unlike the second sun photographed in Indonesia, its appearance would have a very real effect on our planet.
The second sun, if it is there, is something that should worry us quite a bit. It's sort of like a solar system time bomb.
Coming up, an invisible force cripples satellites and threatens the shuttle.
Satellites are tumbling out of their orbits. There's something seriously going wrong.
An invisible force simultaneously plunges an entire city into darkness and damages orbiting spacecraft.
Something big has just happened. The city's in meltdown. Nothing works.
The question on everyone's mind is, what's going on?
The terrifying incident triggers fears of a nuclear attack.
The Americans realize that their defense against nuclear attack are all jammed. Many people are thinking that a nuclear holocaust has begun.
March 13th, 1989. On a clear spring afternoon, Space Shuttle Discovery blasts off from Launch Complex 39 at the Kennedy Space Center. But just hours into its mission, the craft mysteriously malfunctions.
The shuttle is experiencing excessively high pressure readings. It's so worrisome, they're forced to shut off some key electrical systems.
The malfunction threatens the safety of the mission.
In the control center, they're scrambling to figure out what's going on.
And this is only the third mission since the Challenger disaster. It's almost impossible not to think of it.
As ground controllers rush to restore Discovery systems, reports emerge that other spacecraft are also going haywire.
Satellites are losing connection, losing communication, some of them even tumbling out of their orbits. There's something seriously going wrong.
Minutes later, a massive power cut hits Quebec in Canada.
No one has electricity. People are stuck in elevators, they're stuck in trains.
The city, Quebec, is in total meltdown. People don't know what caused this power outage.
The question on everyone's mind is, what's going on?
The mystery event plunges millions of homes into darkness and cuts communication links in countries around the world.
Many people are thinking that a nuclear holocaust has begun.
These disruptions, the loss of electricity, the lack of radio communication, these are the hallmarks of a nuclear attack.
Over the following hours, the authorities received no reports of nuclear explosions on the ground. But the events also bear the characteristics of something equally disturbing. An aerial weapon called a nuclear electromagnetic pulse, or EMP.
A nuclear explosion is detonated high in the atmosphere, and what it does is destroys all the electronics, causes a big voltage, basically shorts out all of the connections in computers and everything else.
A high-altitude EMP weapon is capable of simultaneously frying electrical devices on the ground and in orbit.
The point of an EMP attack is to blind the enemy completely so that they can't use their electronics, they can't use their communications, and they certainly can't launch a counterattack.
The idea of deliberately exploding a nuclear bomb high in Earth's atmosphere sounds incredible, but it's happened before.
50 years ago, the United States government did an experiment they called Starfish Prime, which was the launch of a thermonuclear warhead into the upper realms of the atmosphere. And it created a massive, almost spherical explosion.
The 1962 Starfish Prime explosion above the Pacific Ocean damaged electrical components and caused power surges in Hawaii, almost 900 miles away. But experts doubt a similar weapon accounts for the strange events in 1989.
For one thing, people's cars worked. An EMP will destroy all the electronics in a modern automobile. If your car still works and your phone doesn't, it's not an EMP attack.
The massive blackout lasts for 9 hours. Shortly after it ends, NASA solar physicists make a discovery that could explain the weird events.
Prior to this event happening, there had been a huge flare on the surface of the sun observed by ground-based instruments at Kitt Peak in Tucson, Arizona.
The Arizona telescopes detected a giant eruption on the sun's surface, known as an X-class solar flare. X-class is the most powerful category of solar flare and can produce as much energy as 1 billion hydrogen bombs.
This was caused by our sun. What normally we think of as that nice yellow ball in the sky, but in fact it's a very violent star.
The giant flare blasted a field of solar radiation towards our planet at over 1 million miles per hour, frying electrical components in its path.
When that stuff hits Earth, it causes problems with our satellites. It can literally shake the Earth's magnetic field and set a surge of current through power lines that takes out transformers and leaves us in darkness.
If you needed a reminder of how devastating and powerful the sun can be, there it is.
Coming up, Arctic explorers discover an omen of mankind's destruction.
It looks like the snow is covered with blood. It's like the ground is bleeding.
People who saw this thought of the apocalypse. Maybe they were right.
Arctic explorers make a disturbing discovery.
It looks like the snow is covered with blood. It's like the ground is bleeding.
There's something gruesome. It's really a haunting view.
The grim encounter goes unexplained for more than a century.
They have no explanation for what this red liquid is.
Now, new NASA research suggests the phenomenon could spell mankind's doom.
The outlook for human life could be disastrous.
The first people who saw this and thought of the apocalypse, maybe they were right.
August 1818. Explorer Captain John Ross and his crew are 3 months into a perilous voyage through the icy waters of the Arctic.
Captain John Ross is leading 4 ships through the Arctic Circle north of Greenland, and they're trying to find a passage to the Pacific.
As Ross rounds Cape York in northwest Greenland, he and his crew spot something strange on the frozen coast.
They're looking out over the Arctic, and there are these blood-red streams going through the snow as far as the eye can see.
It looks like the snow is covered with blood. It's like the ground is bleeding.
The eerie, blood-colored liquid appears to be flowing down the cliffs lining the shore.
These rivers of blood on the ice would give you a sense that some gruesome massacre has taken place. It's really a haunting view.
Ross orders his crew to disembark to investigate the weird phenomenon. But they are unable to identify the cause of the sinister red snow.
Captain Ross orders samples to be collected, to be brought back to London to be analysed. Now, of course, by the time they get back to London, the snow has melted, leaving only this dark red liquid that looks like red wine.
Ross submits the samples to scientists for chemical analysis. The mystery of the blood-red snow makes national headlines.
Even the newspapers picked up the story of this strange blood-coloured snow and the analyses that were trying to be done to explain it.
Some scientists suggest that the red pigment could be from iron-rich meteorites buried in the Arctic snow.
And you put the meteorites down in an environment like the polar environment of the Earth where there's snow and water melting out of that snow, and it's going to rust that iron, right, and create these reddish mineral deposits.
The discovery of several meteorites in the area during the 19th century seems to back up this idea. But when investigators cross-reference their locations with where they found the red snow, the theory doesn't stack up.
The meteorite idea might be good for one particular place, but these reddish deposits of snow, they're found in multiple places, and in places where there's no evidence of meteorites at all. So we have to come up with another hypothesis.
Another possible clue to the mystery comes from a book that Ross publishes about his expedition in the Arctic. In the appendix, a botanist suggests the sinister snow could be created by living creatures.
The botanist's name was Robert Brown, and he proposed that there was some sort of biological cause that could turn the snow red.
Decades later, evidence emerges to support Brown's theory. Scientists re-examine Ross's samples and discover traces of tiny life forms.
Sure enough, when examining some samples with a microscope, scientists were able to confirm that indeed what they were looking at that was causing this red color was reddish-colored microbial algae.
The life forms are called Chlamydomonas nivalis. Tests indicate that sunlight transforms their color from green to red.
The algae have a red pigment called a carotenoid, and it takes in ultraviolet light and starts to turn a red color.
It's a big discovery for the scientific community because for the first time we're seeing a life form that is literally living off of ice.
The discovery that Captain Ross's red Arctic snow was created by living creatures stuns the scientific world. And further research reveals these life forms could be the doom of mankind.
The reason that tiny little algae could pose such a hazard to the Earth is they make the snow darker. And the darker the snow, the more sunlight it absorbs, and the hotter it gets, and the more it melts.
You can think of it sort of like putting on a darker t-shirt versus a lighter one. You feel a lot warmer, and that's what's going on with the snow.
Scientists fear this process will lead to a deadly chain reaction. The more meltwater the life forms create, the more they will thrive. And the more they thrive, the faster sea levels will rise.
There's an interesting tale here of David against Goliath. a tiny little algae, just merely microns in size, ultimately could cause an entire environmental change on the planet.
Recent studies suggest that the red algae have spread to around half of the Arctic's glaciers. To date, scientists have not discovered any way to stop them.
So this algal bloom is worsening with time. And in fact, from NASA orbital data, you can see that it's expanding. So in an ironic twist, when the first people who saw this and thought of the apocalypse, maybe they were right.
Coming up, an amateur astronomer spots something strange on a live NASA feed.
It looked like something with an engine. It had like these blue thrusters.
We still don't have certain explanation for what this was.
An amateur astronomer monitoring a live video feed from the ISS sees something that defies explanation.
I just saw this object appear from nowhere.
Something seems to be stalking the International Space Station.
But as he attempts to ID the mystery object, the video link cuts out.
When the live feed cuts out, right after something mysterious happens, people are going to start asking questions.
April 5th, 2016. Kidderminster, England. Space enthusiast Jaden Beeson is watching a live video feed from the International Space Station. Just before midnight, he notices a strange object appear between the ISS and the distant glow of the Earth's horizon.
I just saw this object appear from nowhere, and it looked like it was tracking the International Space Station. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Whatever the mystery object is, it appears to be operating under its own power.
All of a sudden, this blue glare came from the back of it, and it just sort of like slowly went the opposite way to me.
Stunned by what he's witnessing, Beeson takes a screen grab of the video for closer analysis.
Some people said it could be a flare on the window, but this thing looked metal. It didn't look like any light reflecting off the sun.
The object seems to stalk the ISS for over 3 minutes. Then the live feed dies.
When the live feed cuts out, right after something mysterious happened, people are going to start asking questions.
When Beeson publishes the image of the mysterious entity online, it goes viral.
That image is very, very interesting. It's circular, almost like a donut.
So this object has a real sleek appearance. It looks rather ominous. Online commentators ask if this is some kind of an alien craft. And when you look at the video, you can kind of see why.
This isn't the first time ISS cameras have captured unexplained phenomena in the Earth's orbit.
There is a long history of sightings of strange objects circling the space station. So the question is, are we ourselves being surveilled by objects from outer space?
Incredibly, just 2 weeks later, the ISS video feed is interrupted by another unexplained entity.
It's this object here. Sort of looks like a diamond or a jellyfish in space. But just as we're getting to look at it, something happens. we lose the feed.
Could there be a single rational explanation for both sightings?
Some people said it could actually be a cargo ship that delivered food up to the International Space Station, just obviously going back to the Earth.
Unmanned spacecraft regularly visit the International Space Station, carrying supplies and equipment to the onboard crew. But when investigators cross-reference the dates of known resupply missions, the theory falls down.
The problem is, there's no correlation between when a spacecraft docks at the International Space Station and when this strange object appears.
Some analysts suggest that if the object is in a supply ship traveling to the ISS, then perhaps it is attached to the space station itself.
The International Space Station has all sorts of antennae, arms, struts, solar panels. When the sun hits these things in the right angle, they can look really weird. They can look as if they are a separate object, not attached to the ISS.
Beeson's own observations suggest the mystery object is unlikely to be a piece of the space station.
Whatever it was, it had power, it was going fast, and it just disappeared. It was definitely an object in space.
Image analyst Mark D'Antonio suggests that the object could be a spacecraft, just not one under extraterrestrial control.
It's probably not the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. However, it could be the Chinese space station, the Tiangong-1. And if that's what we're seeing here, that's a remarkable sighting.
Tiangong-1 was the Chinese Space Agency's prototype space station. In March 2016, it was put into sleep mode and left to decay in orbit.
And Houston Cadet Road 3 heat mode is complete. Standing by for the ATS update. On your go.
But astronaut Winston Scott doubts it could account for the object in the video feed.
You typically don't see any other orbiting vehicles except the ones that you're supposed to see, and approaching Soyuz or an approaching space shuttle or whatever. But no, you won't see the Chinese space station. If you see something like that, you're way too close.
The mystery object does not appear again. The strange sighting remains unexplained.
The jury's still out. The bottom line is, we still don't have a 100% certain explanation of what this was.
Coming up, an Apollo probe discovers weird magnetic patterns on the lunar surface.
They create a shield, just like the shields on the Starship Enterprise.
What is going on?
A NASA probe discovers strange white swirls on the surface of the moon.
It's as if somebody has just laid down a piece of art.
They look kind of like tattoos.
Readings from a second probe show powerful magnetic fields covering the bizarre markings.
They create a shield, just like the shields on the Starship Enterprise.
It just doesn't make sense.
November 1966. NASA's Lunar Orbiter 2 scouts the moon's surface for potential landing sites for the upcoming Apollo missions. As the orbiter scans a volcanic plain called the Ocean of Storms, ground controllers spot something strange in the lunar dirt.
It appears to be this lighter colored material, and if you look closely, they almost look like tattoos.
The ghostly white swirls baffle lunar geologists.
They're just sitting out there with no reason to be there. It just doesn't make sense.
These markings are weird. We don't see them on any of the other moons in our solar system.
3, 2, 1, launch. A very pretty satellite out there.
In 1971, the mystery of the lunar tattoos deepens. The crew of Apollo 15 deploys a remote microsatellite before returning to Earth.
I copy that.
As the satellite passes over the white patterns, it detects strange magnetic fields surrounding them.
There are areas of the moon where there are magnetic fields, and they are located where we find the lunar tattoos.
The origin of the magnetic fields is a mystery, a bizarre relic of the moon's distant geological past. And it seems these fields are somehow creating the lunar swirls.
There are no lunar swirls that don't have a magnetic field. So therefore, the magnetic field has to have something to do with why they're white and why they're there in the first place.
How the fields create the ghostly white swirls remains unknown for over 4 decades. Then, in 2012, British scientists studying satellite data discovered that radioactive particles bombarding the moon are supercharging the magnetic fields.
What happens is that the incoming radiation from the sun actually turbocharges the existing magnetic fields on the moon. So the radiation itself creates conditions that causes the magnetic fields to strengthen.
The supercharging transforms the weak magnetic field into a kind of deflector shield, protecting the lunar swirls from cosmic radiation.
They create a shield, just like the shields on the Starship Enterprise. And so these electrons from the sun blasting in on the moon are being bounced off.
The deflector shields explain how the lunar swirls are formed. The lunar dirt is naturally white, but millions of years of solar radiation darken it. The magnetic fields simply preserve the original brightness.
It's sort of like writing something on yourself with sunscreen and then tanning all day. It's gonna leave a mark.
The discovery of the moon's deflector shields has profound implications for the future of deep space travel.
The mini magnetospheres of the moon have given us an idea that we can make a deflector shield of our own.
In space, radioactive particles constantly tear through astronauts' bodies, damaging their DNA. This can lead to cancers, mutations, and death.
They're energetic enough that they can penetrate the hull of the spacecraft, they can penetrate the body, they can damage cells. They're nasty things.
Scientists hope that by replicating the deflector shields found on the moon, they will be able to protect spacecraft from this deadly radioactive assault.
In the long term, it may be possible to have magnetic shielding, a la Star Trek.
Incredibly, the first steps towards building our very own Starship Enterprise have already begun.
One way we might be able to make an artificial magnetosphere is using a particular type of magnets called superconductors. There is, in fact, a superconductor already on the space station. So we know we can build one, and we know we can get one up into space.
The final frontier is within our reach, thanks to some unlikely inspiration from ghostly patterns on our closest cosmic neighbor.